I've always been pretty fond of the VHS movies. I thought VHS was good. I was a little bit mixed on it when it came out because it's supposed to be VHS tapes, and while they were finding VHS tapes, a lot of the stuff that the source was from was like glasses and stuff like that, like the video glasses. So that one didn't really stick with the gimmick, so that was my issue with it, although I've grown to like it more, I should say, as I went along. I thought VHS 2 was classic. Loved it. One of my favorite anthology films ever made. So if you want to see something really cool that you've not seen, watch this. I don't think they probably stuck to the gimmick as much either, but it was so solid you kind of looked over it. VHS Viral, 2014. Less said about this one, probably the better, because I've never did like this one, and I still don't like it. But needless to say, I was very excited when VHS 94 was announced, and of course now it's on Shudder. It was released last night. I'm just now getting around to watching it. Literally just finished it, but I wanted to go ahead and do a review for it before I had time to forget anything. The same producers and whatnot that was behind the original Bloody Disgusting and all that stuff. A couple of the same directors are involved, but it's like the guy that did The Guest and stuff like that still involved. I didn't really write down notes on this for that stuff. Maybe I should have. Maybe that makes me a bad reviewer. I'm not sure, but I think the important thing to say is it's a really, really great movie, in my opinion. Just right up front, I'll say that. And even though it's completely early, well, not so much early on the year, but early in the review process, this movie, I think it's probably my favorite horror movie I've seen all year. Now, that being said, let's break it down a little bit. For one, it actually uses the VHS gimmick. It's all sourced from stuff that should be VHS tapes, and for the most part, everything looks like a VHS, which it should have. It should have done that from the jump, since these movies are called VHS. But the wraparound this time, the SWAT team is going to invade like a cult. Basically, they got the drop on this cult, and they've got drugs and all this wild stuff. So they're in there. It's super creepy, and there's a bunch of TVs and stuff set up, and at different times, a different segment will play on the TV. The first segment is really fun. It's about the Rat Man. I don't really know the names of the segment, but it's about a Rat Man creature that's supposed to be living basically in the sewage. A news reporter and her cameraman goes to investigate it. This is spliced together with actual, like, what would be TV footage of stuff, so it flows really well together. Even get a little cameo from Smash Strong 6 people doing a commercial that airs during the broadcast. But the majority of this footage is from the cameraman as he and the news lady go to investigate this stuff. Pretty cheesy, yes, but a lot of fun. So if you know me, you know the main things I like when it comes to horror movies is blood, a little bit of comedy, and a good gimmick, and this movie pretty well has all three of those things. The second segment deals with a woman who is basically hosting a wake for a guy, and there's some mystery about why this guy died and why nobody's actually at the wake. And they really are pretty clever about the way that they handle the VHS side of this, because there's cameras set up all around the room to film this wake, and when need be, the woman hosting it will take a camera because it has a flashlight on it, important thing there in this segment, and walks around with it. So it covers the gimmick really well. It's got a nice little, kick to it there at the end of it. You kind of build up to what's going on, and when you see what happens, I think I was satisfied with it. The third segment is probably going to be most people's favorite segment. The only issue I have with this segment is it could have looked a little bit more like VHS. Like, basically every segment here is VHS. The last one probably looks a little bit too much like VHS tape. This one, on the other hand, not as much. But it's got so much, like, bar a little bit of CGI, it's got so much gore and body horror elements to it that I think most people are not going to pay attention to that. Basically, it's a subtitled one. It's definitely an Asian segment, and you have like the scientist who's basically kidnapped people and turned them into half machines. So it's very Tetsuo in some ways, and it's, I believe, the same guy that might have did Safe Haven or whatever from VHS 2. So if you're familiar with what he brought to that, then you're definitely, up for what you're going to get with this, because it's a whole lot of blood, a whole lot of gore, a whole lot of cool stuff. Just a tad bit CGI that's a little bit of an issue here and there. But that's my only complaint, besides it not looking as much like VHS. But if this is a government element, and it kind of has one, maybe their camera should look a little better. But I digress. The last segment is basically a good old boy, country boy group that's has this person. I don't know how much of this I want to spoil if you haven't seen it, but have this person captive, and they're doing horrible things to him, and they're trying to use like the blood of this person for such things, and it really just comes back to get him. And it's got some cool stuff. It's got some funny stuff too. I mean, you're dealing basically dumb people that's doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. You leave the grounds open for some comedic elements, and a lot of the good old boys are walking around with cameras and stuff. So it covers its bases quite well in the how it's being filmed segment too. Backtracking a little bit, the scientist is of course filming in the third segment. He's filming his stuff, and the things he makes have recorders in their vision. So the bases are covered pretty much. And then of course you wrap things up with the wraparound, which is okay. The wraparound isn't nothing special. At its height, it's really creepy, but it doesn't finish as good. Probably is what you would hope for, but nonetheless, it's still good. And basically, right out the jump, as far as VHS 94 goes, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. Wanted to give it a 5 out of 5, but two things that stopped it was the fact that the third segment doesn't really look like VHS compared to the rest, and then the very last thing, there's some corny dialogue with one of the characters there that kind of just makes you cringe a little bit. But if it didn't have those things, it'd be a 5 out of 5, and it may be a 5 out of 5 later on. Most 5 out of 5s I have ain't 5 out of 5 when I first see them anyway. But as I sit right now, favorite horror movie of the year, the best thing I've seen all year. It's bloody, it's fun, it's gory. And if you have Shudder, access to Shudder, if you've got a free trial to Shudder, whatever you got to do, definitely go and check that out. I can't wait for the actual release of it to go with my other VHS movies that I own. But yeah, that's a 4 out of 5 for VHS 94. Favorite thing I've seen this year.